Hello and welcome to Get It on the Table, the painting page for you that likes to listen to the ramblings of a madman while seeing entire armies get painted right before your very eyes. And today we're also going to discuss a little bit around these beautiful bastards right here, the core units of the Empire, the Empire State Troopers, and how to kind of use them in the game. And I'm going to start by also adding Skeleton Horde to the bases. We're just going to start with the bases and see how far we get in around 45 minutes. And maybe talk a little bit around how these guys are performing now and what they are used for. So for you who are not in the know, these are Empire State Troops. They can be fielded as either veteran state troops or as regular state troops. In an army of known, you need to have at least one of these units in your army. And I am going to field them with Halberdiers. And there are kind of two ways of thinking about units in the old world, if you ask me, and it's either from kind of a bear and pretzel point of view, or if you can think about it from a competitive point of view. And the difference is, I feel, from a beer and pretzel point of view, a unit is kind of good and correct, and it's fun to play with and fun to play against, and it kind of does what it's supposed to do. For example, if you charge your knights into the flank of a unit of archers, it's supposed to kind of kill the unit, and most likely, unless your enemy has a good stratagem of some sort, if it is the opposite way, you kind of charge your knights into like kind of what you expect to be a war machine or a weak unit, and they can't destroy it, and I feel like the unit isn't working properly. So they're kind of not fun in a beer and pretzel sense of way. From a competitive point of view, it's whether or not the unit is worth its point, or if it's other things in the army that is kind of out competing it, making it redundant in its own army. And for the state troops, I kind of find that after 1.51 they moved away from this kind of unusable pieces of garbage that I felt that they were before, until somewhat useful units, or might I even say quite decent units. They got a couple of updates on their stat line. They received Horde, and infantry in general are getting better. So now basically you went from a unit where you kind of have to just put your models on the table and then clean it away as soon as it got hit by something, and into something that's quite useful for both keeping and holding objectives and actually being able to dish out a little bit of damage. That is for state troops in general. For the Halberdiers, that's how I feel them. I feel the story is a little bit different competitively. They are not kind of so useful. I'm not sure if the point that you pay for a halberd is going to be worth more than just sending it in bog standard. And for you that likes to play the game, the State Trooper basically got a new role in 1.51 in the fact that they now get a lot more static combat res. And another part is they have gotten a very important thing, which is objectives to hold. And before the objectives, the game was basically just kill your opponent or avoid getting killed. And the state troopers weren't particularly good at any of those things. They aren't too sturdy, and they aren't kind of good at killing anything, even with the halberds. And even now in 1.51, I don't think they're really good at killing things on their own. But I think from kind of how a unit is supposed to work, state troops are in a good position now. I feel that if you play the game, you would expect kind of this to be the bog standard, regularist, most schmegular guys that you could imagine. So unless you kind of buff them up and give them something extra, then they're not going to kind of be able to fight anything. For me as a Skaven player, basically there's not much difference between a state trooper and a clan rat if you just feel them regular. But the difference between kind of a clan rat and an Empire State troop is the fact that you can kind of get a lot of good, solid, non-magical buffs in them. For example, if you put a captain into the unit, they cannot panic, which is, as a Skaven player, I usually want my units to panic and then fall back in good order. But state troops you usually want to keep in position, and that is kind of good. So they can be run through, they can be shot to pieces, they can see people die next to them and still not panic, as long as you have one of those captains in there. So kind of if you load them up, they're able to kind of be a delivery system for good captains. They can be buffed up by demonology. They can get buffs from their priests. And then suddenly become kind of in a bear pretzel game, you could maybe make it, even call them a kind of a Death Star. They are, if you have them upgraded to veteran, they will get the veteran special rule, and they will be able to get one higher weapon skill. The veteran special rule is very, very useful, particularly against anything that uses screams, as you're able to re-roll and then kind of re-roll every single scream test might be what's keeping you from losing an objective to keeping the objective. So I usually like to field them as veteran state troops. And in my army they're going to be loaded up veteran state troops. They're going to have their little halberds, they're going to have their shields, they're going to be veterans, and they're going to have the banner of the Free State of Null, which gives them stubborn. And also if they're close to their detachment unit, they're going to get immune to psychology, as long as the other unit is kind of, you're going to get a lot of synergies, as long as the other unit is with the engineer and within reach of a war machine. Null can get some very funny kind of synergies between their units. But back to kind of the halberds versus the swords. If I built these guys but before kind of the 1.51 and wanted to play this like a competitive army, I might have not built them as Halberdiers, and also, well, that's actually for like both practical reasons, which is, as you see, it's really hard to get them to stand in a group. I can have to figure out the sequence. I built this is sequential and kind of forgot how they were built, but one day I'll figure it out again. Another part is with how good they have gotten with the 1.51 at being a tar pit more than anything else. As a solo unit, you can kind of just put the unit on the table and expect it to kind of stay. It's particularly true for stubborn units of veteran state troops. Long gone is the days when a dragon can just run in and kill the unit in one round. Now you can challenge the dragon and you will most likely win that combat and break it. Because you can just do a challenge. He is going to hit you on 3s unless he is weapon skill 9. So a lot of his attacks are going to fall off. And if he kills you with his lord, then all the better. Because then the dragon can't stomp and the dragon can't attack. If you're lucky enough to play against a guy playing a war boss and a wyvern, he might even be lucky enough to kill you with his tail whip. And then you are in a position where he would lose with combat resolution. Because the dragons no longer get the static combat res, and also in a challenge with a regular champion, if it's dead you can't keep hitting it with the mount after the FAQ. So that means basically that a solo dragon will need support, which it didn't need before, to be able to kind of remove this obstacle from the table in any meaningful way without risking getting killed. And you really, you could think, oh yeah, but the dragon has swift stride and gonna get away. Well, not always. And then you just lost 500 points of model against 173 points of models, or 250 points of models, depending on how you load them out. And you're going to have a very bad day at the office trying to explain how you lost your wyvern to a little bunch of veteran state troops. You can do this with regular state troops too, but it's quite likely to succeed if you keep at least 25 in a unit. So then he's going to need to bring something to soak up that challenge, and then suddenly he has a lot more invested. Not only does he have a 500 point dragon there, but he has another unit, and that unit might also become a liability if you're able to actually pick up some models in that unit, and then you're back to square one. So infantry is in a very good position, and state troops is in a very good position in the army. They suddenly have a role. Now you can also just park it on the objective and then expect them to stay there, and the objective is actually there, which it wasn't before, which just adds to the usefulness. But yeah, I was beginning, as you hear, it's the ramblings here, but the halberds versus no halberds. So before 1.5, the halberd shield situation was as such. Either you will use the halberd and you will get a 6-up save, or you will get the shield and no halberd and you're going to get the 5-up save, which is kind of just a trade-off of the one. So usually if you wanted to kill something, you would use the halberd. If you wanted to not die, then you would use the shield, but you most likely wouldn't kill anything or not die. But now you get parry if you use just the shield and no weapon. Then and hand weapon, and then you will have a 4-up save. So you're sacrificing now 2 armor saves, which kind of is very important in a unit that usually won't kill very much in any case. So I think that from a bear and pretzel situation, the halberds is still pretty cool. You know, it makes your unit more of like a Swiss army knife, and it's not bad per se. It's not like a horrible investment in the unit, but I would be hard pressed to put the 30 points worth of extra attacks into the unit. You could rather save those points and get a sort of might on your veteran sergeant, or just save those points up towards something that actually does damage, like a captain. Usually the captains or the generals are the ones that does damage in the units, in my experience at least. And the unit is basically there not to give any CR, which combat resolution, which you will be more likely to do if they get a 4-up save. And that means they're basically as tough as a unit was in heavy armor shield before. So basically have the same save as a dwarf warrior used to have. So, but I feel like this is a good way, because, you know, if you want to play this unit and you want it to kind of do something, then you need to give it support. You can't just expect a bunch of underpaid mercenaries or levies that want to sit at home, smoke their smoke pipe, maybe beat up some commoners, to actually go out and do real fighting without someone there to kind of inspire them. So I feel like it's a very good design. I feel it's like the game is kind of more fun if you play it from the perspective of the lore. In some ways, that's kind of the way I enjoy playing the game, and I kind of lore-wise feel like a unit of state troops kind of get significantly better. They go from being kind of not very useful to just standing around there to become quite useful if you get kind of a support. In my army, of course, which is the army of Spoiled Gil, the personal army of Spoiled Gil, no such support will be given other than kind of the captain of the mercenaries that is paid to fight for Spoiled Gil and his battle standard. But Spoiled Gil is not very familiar with either magic or religion, so poor soldiers will have to fight and do as best they can with what they got, and expect the cannons and other expensive toys Gil got in the various birthday presents to do the heavy lifting. But I can't wait to have this unit face off against my Skaven army at some point, if someone wants to play as a stand-in for my Empire army. From kind of a tournament position, I was playing against kind of Tomb Kings the other day, not with this but with Skaven, and they basically fill the same role as a state troop, and it's kind of interesting to think about how much that one weapon skill can do for your unit. And that's the kind of in the position of talking, either you want to have veteran state troops or regular state troops, and that one weapon skill reduced the kind of odds of losing a combat versus the Tomb Kings with 16% every single round, from losing a model, and also then upping the opportunity to get in wounds by 16%, which is every single round of the game. After a while, I was able to push them off the objective, because losing phalanx, double outnumbering them while they lost phalanx, and just crumble the unit. And that would be the same thing with state troops. But then the interesting point comes in with weapon skill. It's not like strength, where you usually will get something out of it. It's very circumstantial. For example, if you're fighting something with weapon skill 5, the 4 doesn't matter. It's the same if you have a 3 as if you have a 4. But as soon as you're hitting the kind of regular schmegler things, which you're supposed to kind of fight with the state troops, I'm talking about the Bretonnian Knights. I'm talking about the other state troops. I'm talking about skeletons, anything. Then suddenly that extra odds of not getting hit kind of starts mounting up the resistance a little bit, and it's going to be more valuable for every single round that you want to keep your models on the table. For my part, it's going mostly from a fluff perspective. These guys are hardened mercenaries, underpaid hardened mercenaries that are fighting for pay and fighting because that's their life. They don't have a cushy town's guard job waiting at home where they can pinch barmaids and say, "Hold it, who goes there?" at the gates at night. These guys live for fighting, and therefore I thought that having veterans would be more correct. So the jury is still out for my part whether or not the regular ones are better or the state troops, but I think from a competitive standpoint, I think the cheaper you get these guys, the more you will get of them. So usually you could get 2 units in instead of having kind of the veteran unit. Having them at around 25 or 30 should be kind of the super spot. Just with swords and boards, then you can keep objectives, you can keep stuff away from your cannons, you can kind of control the board. And if you want them to do anything, you should probably get around 30, add kind of a general, a priest, or a mage, preferably demonology or elementalism. Demonology for damage, elementalism for survival, and kind of get the fightiness from having 2 to 3 lords in your front rank. So a tactic could maybe be to have 2 units of 25 sword and board guys running on the sides, and having the big bulky unit of 20 and 30 with support running down the midfield, kind of facing off Death Stars, like for example the Storm Vermin Stars. You should be able to go pretty much toe to toe with them with your veteran troops. The big unit of grave guards, you could be able to keep them away from kind of the middle for some rounds, being able to kind of soak up some screams. If you have again, if you can get the elementalism in or magic resist, then you can also deny some of his spells, be able to kind of fence off a little bit of these similar types of unit and go toe to toe with them. And if you don't need to damage them, to just keep them away, then this kind of unit, the 30-man unit of veteran state troops with the stubborn banner, are really good. I am going to, of course, run them like that. I want to run them down the middle and kind of just keep the enemy away. And for kind of this, I was thinking about the drilled part, but I think that is a little bit even worse than the halberds, in the way that, yes, you can kind of get them into position, but this is a unit that you usually get into position in round 1, so it's very circumstantial, exactly like the halberds, kind of it's extreme specific situation. For example, this halberd would be very useful the times that you wouldn't get the save, or you're very, very eager to pick off wounds of the enemy, for example. if the enemy has some knights and you kind of want to charge in and pick off the knights because they're out of position. But usually these kind of targets will avoid you, and you have to put in a lot of support that I don't think kind of the army is built for, to get state troops from one position to another. For example, you could get the mage and use the travel hidden pathways or whatever the spell is called, which moves them from one position to another. But I think that basically if you just use them like an anvil, you might be just a little bit more cost effective, and you can just get more state troops rather than kind of getting that support for them. It's really hard and costly to kind of shift a unit of 25 state troops. I've figured out that with Skaven clan rats, I played them in the tournament, just 20 Skaven clan rats. You have to almost always pay more than you benefit from trying to remove those assholes. They're leadership 10 if they're within range of a Grey Seer. Same with these guys, is going to be leadership 10 most of the time. If they're within the leader, they're stubborn. It's no way that you're going to kind of easily get them removed without using kind of significant amount of points. And also the nice thing there, if you put the captain in or general, they're immune to panic, which means you kind of can't rely on sending a shooty unit like a Sky Lantern in and just blow them to pieces and expect them to run, because they won't. They will stand firm. There's which is nice. Yeah. Sorry, my wife walked in a little bit there, so I got a little bit interrupted in my thought process, but we're back to talking state troops, the in-depth analysis of this kind of unit. And as I said, hard to shift. Doesn't do very much other than not being hard to shift unless you kind of buff it up a lot. But then there's other more fun units to kind of do that with, either if you want to use some cavalry or you want to use the kind of great swordsman, which has become very, very good now with their strength 4. It's a big one. And being able to add a little bit of extra CR into the unit is also nice. Yeah. So infantry is not as useless as it was. And of course we're going to do some great swords at a later point on this channel. Maybe after this unit, maybe after I do some cannons. We'll see. If we get any responders, I can take a little bit of a vote. So the army will basically consist of a large block of these guys. Some handgunners, some cannons, a Hellblaster volley gun, steam tank, and some knights maybe. I'm not sure if I want to keep them in the list or if I should maybe get some more outriders. And I want the road wardens, the very special unit that you can get for Nuln. Yeah, not because they're particularly much better than Outriders. Outriders are really, really good. Maybe the best unit in the known list. But they're fluffy and cool and fun to make. They're like Pistoliers that Pistoliers were in the way that I wanted them to be. Of course, Pistoliers is a little bit better now because they lost kind of Impetuous, got a little bit better on them. They can get at least more than 50-50 odds of doing what you want them to do, which is nice. But still, you can't kind of rely on them, and for a shooty unit like them, having impetus is a deal breaker for me. I find it very just annoying to have kind of my cool looking pistol unit just run off. And you might notice that the first model that I painted for this army was a Pistolier. Well, it's going to be fielded as a Road Warden. I'm sorry about that for people that hates them. I love the look of the Pistoliers, I just don't like the rules. For, as I said, from kind of a beer and pretzel point of view, they're not doing what I want them to do. It might be fluffy that they are young and impetuous, but then they're not in this army. They're not in this kind of cowardly, paid mercenary army of hardened criminals and scum that works for a private army for pay. So I like to imagine that my road wardens are kind of just battle-hardened pistoliers that never stayed in a serious army long enough to get the equipment to become kind of outriders. And thus we will have pistolier looking models. They might be some of my favorite looking models in this Empire army line. Very, very close with the Empire State Troop. I know a lot of people are kind of nostalgically loving the ones from, if it's 3rd edition, I had some of those before, but I couldn't find them. I kind of look like this ones. I might not be that much into the lack of shoes on some of these models, but other than that, I think they look very like gritty and cool. And yeah, generally a lovely unit that is going to hopefully perform well on the tabletop. If they perform half as well as my Skaven, then I'm going to be very happy. Kind of the worst thing I know about is having models that are not doing what they're supposed to. A good example is when I tried to play Age of Sigmar. I had this Carnosaur, this is in 1st edition, and I had hardly played before, but I tried to charge it into kind of a unit of plague rats, and got beaten severely, and they kind of couldn't kill the unit, and I even did kind of the math, and it was like, oh no. This kind of huge, cool dinosaur can't beat 10 kind of plague-infested rats. Then it felt like something was wrong. And yeah, it's a kind of a run through that. I not necessarily need my models to be the best or to perform top, but like if they're at least doing what they're supposed to, then I'm happy. As I said, kind of like if you have handgunners and they shoot at a unit of knights, then they should have a pretty good odds at least picking off a couple of knights if they hit at least. And then you can say, of course, oh yeah, but they can't move or shoot, and that's fine. It's going to be really hard for them to hit, but when they hit, it's kind of nice then that they're able to kind of be able to pick off that knight. If it was highly unlikely that the knight would die from getting hit with 4 or 5 pistol balls or handgun balls or whatever you call it, rifle balls, then it kind of would feel like the unit weren't doing what it's supposed to. But currently it does feel like it. Might not be good, but with a little bit of support, with a squint of magnificent magifier and the ability to shoot in 2 ranks once a game, they're decent enough, I guess, for for how much I want them to do on the table. Kind of the same with the state troops. They're not the best infantry, but they're certainly not useless, which is more or less what you can ask from a unit. I feel like in general everything in Nuln is pretty decent. There's nothing that's absolute abhorrently bad, and there's no reason to take. Maybe Pistoliers. Yeah, Pistoliers kind of suck. See, now we've done the bases. Now the next part is going to be the fun. See if we can find a suitably dry one. Hopefully people will appreciate that I at least try to do a little better with lighting and the camera angle. Let me know if you enjoyed it more than the last video. My goal is to always become kind of better, and at one point hopefully it will be feel kind of professional watching this, and not like a amateur trying to keep a channel going. More like someone that actually knows what they can do. And for that I would like to give a big shout out to two other channels. It's been very helpful. One is Hobby Jerk. It's a very good channel for battle reports. The guys over there made a video basically how to do the stream, which I highly recommend. It really helped me kind of get over the first speed bumps. For you who haven't tried to stream before, it is very, very hard. It's very hard to figure out how to kind of do this. Videos with, the video games, it's fine. There's so many plugins, so much to do, so easy. You can just kind of start clicking at your computer and it starts streaming. When it comes to this kind of live feeds, it's really hard, and it's so many traps that you can kind of walk into. Let's see if I can use some of the last minutes to start kind of getting some yellow out there. Try to get this roughly halfway there. Kind of a cross section. It seems like it's a flag part. Easy to say. Starting with the yellow because it's easier to kind of cover up, so you can kind of go out a little farther with that and then still be able to cover it up without doing too much touch-up work. Seems a little less than halfway. That might be halfway. Like 1, 2, 3, somewhere like around here. So 1, 2, 3. Okay, so it should be here, I guess. No, it seems like it should be here. Okay. Well, we'll cover it up with purple later, but it seems nice. The other side. 1, 2, 3. Doesn't seem like that worked, so I think it should be like this. Roughly do like this, then it's easier to see. Okay. As I said, this is kind of a get it on your table channel. I'm not going for golden demon standards right here. I'm going to do something that looks nice enough. And as I mentioned last week, it might be that we need to do kind of a little postponement on the Empire project, because I actually got a commission, which is kind of fun. You can ask, oh, who's crazy enough to kind of do this kind of commission? You're obviously a madman. Well, this guy wants kind of the same thing as me. He wants his army on the table, and he kind of wants a paint slapped on his models, more or less. So hopefully I can make him more than happy and impressed by the result by delivering an army that looks quite good on quite a fast time. This is going to be on the channel, and I will shout him out as soon as I know what kind of channel it is. He's making battle reports. And in a couple of weeks we will make our first battle reports here on the channel, and I will cover my game with Skaven, and I might do kind of a pre-talk and rundown of my list with my Skavens at some point during the next couple of weeks. So hold on for that if you're a Skaven enthusiast. I will try to kind of run down my list and what I'm thinking. I always like to jump into the part of the model that I find hardest first, because then I'm done with it and I don't need to kind of be worried about that part anymore. That's a little bit of a cheating, is to go with these kind of nice bright colors like yellow and purple, because then people won't notice so much when it's not perfect. They will just look at the nice colors and say, oh, that's a nice color. So I highly recommend trying out this contrast paint. This is a Yan yellow. It's really nice, really, like a really nice kind of grim dark but still poppy yellow. Spreads happiness through hearts of everyone that encounters it. And I see, of course, now that we're 1.5 hours was kind of a very long episode concept, and I don't think anyone would like that, so I'm trying to do this once on around 45 minutes, and as I said, my aim is to try to get 2,000 points done in roughly 6 times 1.5 hours, which is roughly 9 hours of efficient painting. So that is still going to be the goal, but who knows, maybe I will, maybe I won't be able to, particularly not if I ask myself the question, what kind of color do I want the plume to be, because then it's going to drag out. But I think for this guy, purple is going to be nice. Get him a little bit down. think it's the thing that drew me into Empire was the idea of having just like this most regular of troops going up against dragons and wizards and everything, and then Null came and I was thinking, wow, this is really something that's even more goes into the kind of human spirit against the monsters and odds of everything. Just kind of like, oh, we don't do magic very well, we don't do religion very well, we kind of just get our stuff, we get some quite okay, decent artillery. We're not the best artillery, not the worst artillery. We got a lot of it, and that's what matters. It's in the end, it's all that really matters, is that we are able to fight off our enemies and save the trade routes from being robbed, most importantly. There she blows, or does she? Nope. There she blows. Okay, Mr. Captain. I always like it when they have two of these plumes, because then it's not easier to just do one of both. But this one's going to, let's do every other one yellow, every other one purple, and that's how the cookie crumbles. There she goes. So always remember, left arm yellow, right arm purple. Left arm yellow, right arm purple. I think that's all we get for today. You know what, I'll finish this model. Because I'm too cool to follow a rule. Which all you cool cats out there could identify with, this contrarian cool Warhammer players. Taking time out of our days, and I really do appreciate that you people are watching. I got a lot more views than I've ever expected to get the first kind of try, and it kind of inspires me to keep making videos and kind of trust the concept a little bit. Of course, try to do it better, make it smoother, make it nicer, and kind of respect the audience enough to say that, okay, this didn't look good enough, let's do it better next time. And if you have suggestions, then my aim is to always improve, to become the very best of those who ever was. To paint them is my real quest. And I don't know if this is armor or... well, I guess it's not. It's cloth now. It's cloth now. Okay, we at least got the command down. And thank you. Please like and subscribe if you haven't done it. And please check out Hobby Jerks. Check out the War Hipster. War Hipster was very helpful in just making kind of this best paint videos. He's a really good painter. Very professional. Checking him out if you can. Thank you very much.